Todo lo que sé, pero que en este momento no estoy pensando. Todo de lo que estaba consciente una vez, pero que ahora me he olvidado. Todo lo que mis sentidos perciben, pero que mi inconsciente no nota. Todo lo que involuntariamente y sin prestar atención siento, pienso, recuerdo, deseo y hago. Todas las cosas del futuro que se están formando dentro de mí y que alguna vez llegarán al consciente. Todo esto es el contenido del inconsciente.
Research comes to the question of the unconscious. There things become necessarily blurred.
Yes.
Because the unconscious is something which is really unconscious. And so you have no object, you see nothing.
No.
You only can make inferences, you know.
Yes.
And so we have to create a model
Yes.
of this possible structure of the unconscious because we can't see it.
Yes.
Now, you see, he came to the concept of the unconscious chiefly on the basis of the same experience I had made in the association experiment, namely that people reacted. They said things, they did things without knowing that they did it or said it.
Yes.
And this is something you can observe experimentally in the association experiment, where people cannot remember afterwards what they did or what they said in the moment where a stimulus word hits the complex.
Yes.
With the reproduction, in the so-called reproduction experiment, you go through the whole list, and you will see that the memory fails where there was a complex reaction.
Yes.
And that is the simple fact Freud has based his idea of the unconscious on, because that is kind of what you can see time and again, that people, for instance, make a mistake in speech, or that they say something which they didn't mean to say, that just make ridiculous mistakes, you know. There are no end of stories, you know about how people can betray themselves by saying something they didn't mean to say at all, yet in the unconscious meant him to say that thing, just that thing. For instance, when you want to express your sympathy at a funeral, you go to somebody to say, I congratulate you, you say, that's pretty painful, you know, but that happens, and it is true. Now, this is something that goes parallel now with the whole school of the Salpêtrière in Paris. There was Pierre Janet, who has worked out that side of the unconscious reactions quite particularly. Now, Freud refers very little to Pierre Janet. Well, I have studied with Pierre Janet in Paris, and he has formed my ideas very much. He was a first-class observer, though he had no dynamic theory about, no psychological theory. It was a sort of physiological theory of the unconscious phenomena as a so-called abaissement du niveau mental. That means a certain depotentiation of the tension of consciousness. It sinks below the level of consciousness and thus becomes unconscious. Now, that is Freud's view too. Only he says it sinks down because it is helped, it is repressed from above. Then that was my first point of difference with Freud. I say there are cases in my observation, where there was no repression from above, but the thing itself withdrew.
Yes.
Those contents that became unconscious had withdrawn all by themselves.
Yes.
They were not repressed. Yes. On the contrary.
Yes. Yes.
They had a certain autonomy. There I discovered the concept of autonomy.
Yes.
And that these contents that disappear have the power to move independently from my will. Either they appear when I want to say something definite, they interfere and say and speak themselves instead of what I wanted to say.
Yes.
Or they make me do something which I didn't want to do at all. Or they withdraw in the moment where I want to use them.
Yes.
They suddenly disappear.
Ago.
Los instintos y arquetipos juntos forman el inconsciente colectivo. Lo llamo colectivo porque, con diferencia al consciente personal, no está constituido por un contenido individual o único, sino de uno universal y de ocurrencia regular. Fue después de mis experimentos de asociación cuando me di cuenta de que siempre existe un inconsciente. ¿Qué es el inconsciente, entonces? ¿Consiste meramente de los restos o retales de la actividad consciente, o existen cosas que son activas para siempre? O sea, ¿es el inconsciente un factor por sí solo? Pronto llegué a la conclusión de que el inconsciente tiene que ser un factor por sí solo, porque he observado una y otra vez sentimientos, alucinaciones o fantasías de pacientes esquizofrénicos conteniendo motivos que no podrían haber adquirido en nuestro entorno.
Jung y Freud eran hombres muy distintos, con planteamientos diferentes. Su ruptura fue a continuación del descubrimiento más original y controvertido de Jung. El inconsciente colectivo, una idea que dedujo de un sueño.
Estaba en una casa que no conocía. Era mi casa, y en el piso de arriba había una especie de salón amueblado al estilo rococó. No sabía cómo era el piso de abajo. Allí era todo mucho más antiguo. Esa parte de la casa debía ser del siglo XV o XVI. Los muebles eran medievales, los suelos de ladrillo rojo. Fui de una habitación a otra pensando que debería explorar toda la casa. Me encontré una pesada puerta y la abrí. Una escalera de piedra bajaba al sótano. Allí me encontré una hermosa habitación abovedada que parecía muy antigua. Las paredes eran de los tiempos romanos, el suelo era de losas de piedra, y en una de ellas descubrí una argolla que levantaba la losa, y vi una escalera de piedra muy estrecha que seguía hacia abajo. Descendí y entré en una cueva. En el polvo había huesos esparcidos y cerámica rota, los vestigios de una cultura primitiva. Descubrí 2 cráneos enormes, seguramente muy antiguos, medio desintegrados. Entonces me desperté. Estaba muy claro que la casa representaba una especie de imagen de la psique. El consciente estaba representado por el salón. Tenía un ambiente de haberse habitado. El piso bajo representaba el primer nivel del inconsciente. Cuanto más profundo iba, más extraña y oscura era la escena. El sótano romano y la cueva prehistórica significaban tiempos pasados y etapas anteriores del inconsciente. Mi sueño, evidentemente, señaló las bases de la cultura y la historia, una historia de capas sucesivas de conocimiento. Mi sueño constituía una especie de diagrama estructural de la psique humana. Fue el primer indicio de un colectivo debajo de la psique personal.
You look at, then you will accept, in other words, the Oedipus complex, but not as being the only important such influence. You will see this is just one of many
many ways of behavior. Now, see, the Oedipus gives you an excellent example of the behavior of an archetype. It is always the whole situation. There is a mother, there is a father, there is a son, there is a whole story, how such a situation develops, and to what end it leads finally.
Yes.
And that is an archetype. You see, an archetype always is a sort of abbreviated drama. Namely, it begins in such and such a way, it extends to such a complication, and it finds a solution in such a way. Yes. That is the usual form. As for instance, you take the instinct of building a nest with birds.
Yes.
In the way they build the nest, there is the beginning, the middle, and the end.
Yes.
It is built just to suffice for a certain number of young. So, you see, the end is already anticipated. And that's the reason why in the archetype itself there is no time. It is a timeless condition where beginning, middle, and end are just the same. They're all given in one.
Yes.
Now that is only a hint to what the archetype can do, you know,
yes.
But that's a complicated question. Well, you know what a behavior pattern is.
Yes.
Now, the way in which, say, a weaver bird builds its nest, that is an inherited form in him. He will apply all certain symbiotic phenomena between insects and plants. They are inherited patterns of behavior. And so man has, of course, an inherited scheme of functioning. You see, his liver and his heart and all his organs and his brain will always function in a certain way, following its pattern. We only have a great difficulty of seeing it because we cannot compare. There are no other similar beings like man that are articulate and could give account of their functioning. If that were the case, we would know, I don't know what. But because we have no means of comparison, we are necessarily unconscious about our own conditions. But it is quite certain that man is born with a certain functioning, a certain way of functioning, a certain pattern of behavior. And that is expressed in the form of archetypal images or archetypal forms. For instance, the way in which a man should behave is given by an archetype. Yes. And therefore, you see, the primitives tell such stories. A great deal of education goes through storytelling.
Yes.
For instance, they call in a palaver of the young men and two older men perform before the eyes of the younger all the things they should not do.
Yeah.
And at the end they say, now that is exactly the thing you shall not do. Another way is they tell them of all the things they should not do.
Yeah.
And you, like the Decalogue,
yes.
Thou shalt not.
Yes, yes.
And that is always supported by mythological tales.
Yes.
For instance, our ancestors have done so and so, and so you shall do.
Yes.
Or such a hero has done so and so,
yes.
And that is your model.
Yes.
For instance, take the teaching of the Catholic Church. There are several thousand saints, and they show us how, you see,
the models then become the models for the individual.
And they have their legends, and that is Christian mythology.
Yeah.
In Greek, you know, there was a Theseus, there was a Heracles, models of fine men, of gentlemen, you know.
Yes, yes.
And they teach us how to behave. They are archetypes.
I see.
Archetypes of behavior. So you see, when you have lived in the primitive circumstances, in the primeval forest, among primitive populations, then you know that phenomenon. You are seized with a certain spell, and then you do a thing that is unexpected. Now, see, the archetype is a force, it has an autonomy. It can suddenly seize you. It is like a seizure.
Yeah.
So, for instance, falling in love at first sight, that is such a case. You see, you have a certain image in yourself without knowing it of the woman, of the woman.
Yeah.
Now you see that girl, or at least a good imitation of your type.
Yeah.
And instantly you get a seizure, and you're gone.
Yeah.
And afterwards you may discover that it was a hell of a mistake. Or you see, a man is quite capable, he's intelligent enough to see that that woman of his choice, as one says, not no choice, he has been captured.
Yeah.
You know, he sees that she is no good at all, that she is a hell of a business. And he tells me so, and he says, for God's sake, doctor, help me to get rid of that woman. He can't. He's like clay in her fingers. And that is the archetype. That is so-called archetype of the anima.
Yeah, yeah.
He thinks it is all his soul. Well, you know, that is a bit complicated, you know. The anima is an archetype form expressing the fact that a man has a minority of feminine or female genes.
Yeah.
And that is something that doesn't disappear in him. That is constantly present. And it works as a female in a man. Therefore, already in the 16th century, the humanists have discovered that man has an anima.
I see.
And that each man carries his female with himself, they say it.
Yeah. And so
that is not a modern invention.
Yeah.
So now you see, the same is the case with the animus. That is a masculine image in a woman's mind, which is not sometimes quite conscious, sometimes it is not conscious, but it is called into life the moment that woman meets a man who says the right things.
I see.
And then because he said it is all true, and he is the fellow.
Yes.
No matter what he is.
Yes. So, to infer something.
Those are particularly well-founded archetypes.
Yeah.
Those two, and there you can lay hands on the basis, as it were, of the archetype. They are exceedingly well defined.
Also use the term self.
Yes.
Now, the word self, then, would this have a different meaning than, say, ego or...
Oh, yes, oh, quite, oh, yes. You see, when I say self, then you must not think of I, myself, because that is only your empirical self, and that is covered by the term ego.
Ego, yes.
But when it is matter of the self, then it is matter of a personality that is more complete than the ego, because the ego is only consists of what you are conscious of.
Yeah, yes, your awareness.
What you know to be yourself. Yes. The whole personality of man is indescribable.
Yes.
His consciousness can be described. His unconscious cannot be described, because the unconscious, as I must repeat myself, is always unconscious.
Yes.
And it is really unconscious. It really does not know it.
Does not know about it.
And so we don't know our our unconscious personality. We have hints, we have certain ideas, but we don't know it really. Nobody can say where man ends. And that is the beauty of it, you know. Yeah. It's very interesting. Yeah. The unconscious of man can reach God knows where. There we are going to make discoveries.
Yes, yes.